Let's have a
private conversation.
Pretty good, guys. Pretty good. So, as we're going to come back into this, we have one less person in our group, but that's okay because we're going to focus a bit more on our week one folks. And Christian, our transition period guy. So, let's start off over here, Shelby. You said you had some experience from the last COP, right?
I do, yes. I was at week 2 of COP24.
Cool. So, you guys have experience from week 1 here.
Yes. Yep.
So, tell me a little bit about each of them. What major players are here during each of them, and how do they compare?
We could go first. All right, week 1, Jack.
Yeah, so week 1 is basically the opening week where the UNSCC plenaries, which are like 2, subcommittees under the whole body called SUBSTA and SBI. One is a subsidiary body for implementation. One is the, what's SUBSTA? Subsidiary body for science, technology, advancement, yeah. And so that is basically 2 more technical committees that will handle and debate on all of the business and the work of the COP during the first week. And the delegates who participate in those committees are more career negotiators and more kind of technical experts. And so everything in the first week, I think, is a little less political and a little more trying to get more work done quickly before on the second week what happens is ministers from governments will arrive, and that's more political appointees, and there's I think a little more tension there. I mean, maybe you could speak to that, what the second week is like.
Yeah, so week 2 is, what it sounds like, is it's a lot more tense. The discussions, the negotiations last year ran until 1 or 2 in the morning because there were just so many things that needed to be decided upon. Like, it sounds from what you guys were saying that week 1 is kind of the basis, and they're establishing what the topics are going to be and kind of what's going to be more important than, the other. Whereas week 2 is they, have established all of that. They've established what's really important to talk about. And then they kind of dive into those topics and talk about just the nitty gritty where they are disagreeing about a singular word and a singular clause in the resolution that they're trying to make, or they're disagreeing on a certain policy that someone wants to implement and someone else doesn't. Last year, there were some tensions. There were 5 countries who disagreed on even having a rule book altogether, and those countries were the United States, Russia, China, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. And because of those disagreements, and this is what they didn't want the observers to see, was in the negotiations, they were fighting pretty much. Every single night, the negotiations went until 1 or 2 in the morning. None of us were allowed in there, but we could kind of get summaries of what was going on. But there were a lot of really intense negotiations that we were kind of withheld from because they didn't want us to see. But like you said, in week 2, kind of the more powerful political figures from those countries will come and have more of an influence, and this is where more of the decision making happens. So also last year, Al Gore was there. Greta Thunberg was also there. She's going to be there again during week 2 this year. And this is, so long story short, this is just kind of when less fun things happen. Like, there are a lot less side events. There are a lot less, small other things that people can participate in. It's more just kind of narrowing down on the really important issues and just trying to reach an agreement. Mm-hmm. So it's
looks like we've got some good things to look forward to.
Yeah.
Christian, as you've been through the tail end of week 1, what are you looking forward to most going into week 2 since you're a transition dude?
Yeah, so for week 1, I also heard that the side events are more fun, so I sort of focused on attending those and attending different topics that I was interested in, like the technology behind limiting climate change. And so I attended some of those talks, as well as the potential business opportunities and what people are doing currently to capitalize on limiting the effects of climate change while maintaining economic viability. And so the second part of the early part of week 2, I'm going to be focusing more on the negotiations. I want to attend and see how the tone has changed with respect to talking about the different policies or topics that they will be discussing. And so what I'm most interested in, I'd say, is just, that tone change and how they plan on wrapping things up towards the beginning of week 2, and then hearing about how things are turning out towards the end of week 2 overall. Yeah.
So each of us here at the COP has a different specialty. We have our policy people of Jack, we have our international relations of Shelby, and a whole bunch of various chemists and engineers, and it's a good time, but we have to be careful about what it is that we do and do not cover. So Lucas Fry is amazing. We love the dude. He was here for an entire week by himself last year because of some scheduling conflicts. And he was able to keep up with all the things. However, now that we have more people here, we have him who's really experienced with all the negotiation stuff, going in, taking very thorough notes and reporting on it. Whereas we have, say, us, the newer people, who don't really have that much experience in that domain, but we're really interested in how they're talking about it and some of the new innovative solutions that we can find going forward. What is one thing, either of you two who are going to be departing tomorrow, that you wish you would have experienced more of while you were here?
That's a good question.
I know, I asked it.
I can say for me that I wish, like kind of what Kristen was talking about earlier, going into negotiations, that I knew kind of how to prepare for them beforehand, because it did take me a couple days sitting in negotiations to figure out even a simple conversation, because they are really technical people, can be very complicated. And so like having that draft text beforehand, doing my homework beforehand, and finding out specifically what they were talking about and what the individual countries' interests were would have been really nice to know. I kind of picked that up by the end of the week, and then by the end of the Article 6 negotiations, I was really following what they were talking about. But at the beginning of the week, I did sit down next to Lucas while he was taking good notes and kind of struggled a little bit. So I guess I wish I knew that ahead of time.
Yeah, I think I would second that, or I guess third that. But I do wish that I had a better understanding of that, because to me, that's kind of like the meat and potatoes of why this conference is being held, is like this negotiation between different countries. And so while there are plenty of really awesome side events and things that I was interested in, and in fact, Friday was what they called the Blue COP, which was all ocean-based. And so all these different people for years had been planning on having some ocean-based solutions come out of this COP25. And so Blue COP was kind of their way to bring that to light. And that was really awesome for me. But I do wish that I had a little bit better understanding of the negotiation side of it, because I think that's really the unique opportunity here, is that we can go to science conferences, and we all have science networks. Well, the science majors of us have science networks that,
Hey, let's not sell Shelby short.
I'm sure she's got science networks too.
She's one of the most well-connected out of any of us.
Probably. But yeah, so I think that the unique opportunity here was really to attend some of the negotiations there. And I think that I could have definitely been better prepared for that. And if I could give advice to anyone for next week, it would be not to be afraid and not to shy away from attending the negotiations just because you feel like you won't understand them, because you won't. Update. You won't understand them at first. It will take a while to understand it. And there are lots of terms that I know, for me, I was not familiar with, and I haven't been trained on understanding the political side of this stuff. So I was very intimidated about it, but I think that really is where the good value comes from in this conference.
Yeah, so one of the things we like to focus on a lot whenever we're talking just science communicating and all that stuff is nomenclature and trying to remove the language barrier that comes in with science. Because I have a lot of technical jargon that I use to describe my research. Like, I could tell you all what my research on polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons is, but unless you've had a good amount of organic chemistry, that term probably doesn't mean a whole lot. So we've spent a lot of time on the technical stuff, but I want to move into more of like the culture of the conference a bit, because that's what you've all really experienced that before. What was something that you it kind of changed your expectations about what this was. For me, just looking around, people are nowhere near as well dressed as I thought they were going to be coming into this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went the first day dressed in business professional because I just thought that's what we would all wear. And then we got to the conference and half the observers were wearing jeans. So that was surprising for me. And then another like random thing that surprised me was the number of people who had ear piercings, like various ear piercings, and they would all wear jewelry in them, which whenever I've been to like a professional conference, there was kind of this unspoken rule that if you had lots of ear piercings or, you know, facial piercings, to either take them out or cover them up or wear very conservative jewelry in them. But that's something that I was like kind of surprised about. That was interesting to me culturally, was like lots of the people, both male and female, had like lots of jewelry in and lots of really beautiful jewelry. So that was cool to me.
We also got a lot of indigenous peoples who were just wearing the clothing of their culture. And we are joined here today by the man of the week, Lucas Fry.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Hello.
How do you say your last name?
Fry.
Cool, I got it right.
Yep.
Please introduce yourself a little bit.
Hello, I'm Lucas Fry. I'm a chemistry major at the University of Virginia, and this is my second COP. I went to last year's in Katowice, Poland, and I've had a great time during week 1 of Madrid.
Nice. So, Lucas, you were not here for this, but we did talk you up a whole lot.
Oh,
just a little bit for sure.
I'm flattered. Yeah, sorry I'm coming in late.
Nah, it is all good. You were getting the good foods, and food is life. Speaking of which, they have amazing food here. Like, 10 out of 10. Love Madrid for the food, if nothing else.
Jack's favorite thing to say is that the food here is all variations of hams and bread.
That is not incorrect. It could be good ham and bread, but
Lots of ham and bread.
I will say, this is another one of the unique melting pots over the world. We have a couple of those in America. London is a massive one over in the UK. But Madrid's a big melting pot of lots of different cultures, and that kind of makes it a really cool place to host something like the COP, even though it was a bit last minute. So what are some of your thoughts about having to change venue within a month?
I think that is the most impressive thing that I've ever seen.
Yes.
This past summer, I interned at a meeting planning company, so I know just how much detail goes into planning a conference, including one that is for over 20,000 people. So the fact that they were able to completely just plan a conference at this capacity in about a month, to me, is mind-blowing.
I mean, everything down to the logo on their water bottles has the new updated logo on it, meaning they were ordered and printed and created and shipped in the past 3 or 4 weeks, which is absolutely incredible.
I wonder what the airline staff must have thought, suddenly getting thousands and thousands of requests all at once to change flights. I know there were a lot of problems actually with LATAM flights where they don't service to Europe, and so people were having trouble getting reimbursements or changes done without switching airlines. So it's been a logistical. I'm sure
it was one massive logistical nightmare.
Oh yeah.
But it got pulled off, and kudos to Spain.
It got pulled off surprisingly well. I think one of my favorite things that I noticed just on like the first or second day was their seating, which for those of you who haven't been in the Blue Zone yet, you like pay attention to this when you go, because I thought it was very fascinating. Is a lot of their seating, or even like the materials that the pavilions are made out of, is they're not made of like permanent structures. So they're not benches that are made of metal and plastic like you would anticipate. They're all like accordion fold out like cardboard structures and things like that. And so one of the things that I thought was really cool about that is that at a conference where we're so environmentally focused, these things that usually would just be used once and then either thrown away or given away, because every different conference is going to have a different theme. They want different kinds of seating and different kinds of walls, etc. We're using things that, although will probably be thrown away at the end, are going to be made out of more sustainable materials. And so I thought that was really interesting to see, especially on such short notice.
I think we should back up a little bit and tell people why the conference was changed. So initially, it was going to be held in Santiago, Chile, and they've been planning this conference for a while now, over a year. And recently, there has been a lot of civil unrest in Santiago, and the United Nations decided to cancel or postpone the conference until they could find another place to host because of those protests. And this happened about a month before the conference was supposed to start in early November. And because of that, they were scrambling to find another host, and were thinking of even postponing it. I read some articles that were talking about that. And then Madrid stepped up and offered to host the conference. If Madrid had not stepped up, it would have been held in Bonn, Germany, which is kind of the head of, or the hub of all of their
it's where the
planning.
UN Secretariat hangs out, and they're just like the person in charge of all this stuff that we're going through right now.
It was also the host of COP23.
Okay.
So they had the means to host another conference.
Right. And before that, I mean, well, when we were in Katowice, the place it was supposed to be was in Brazil.
Oh.
And a few months later, I think they had their presidential election, and the new president, not being amenable to climate change efforts, took office and immediately canceled it. So this is really the third venue that it was planned for. And then, of course, with the Chilean president canceling that, as well as APEC, due to the protests and unrest that have been going on in Santiago. So it's.
If I remember the numbers correctly, there was roughly $400 million worth of infrastructure damage done in Santiago alone.
Oh my
because
word.
because of all the fires, the protests. It was insane. 1 million people of their 13 million population converged on that city.
Yeah, and I think there's a really interesting and kind of ironic conversation to be had about that, because such an important aspect of kind of the fight for climate justice and like climate change adaptation is economic inequality, specifically in the global south. And I don't know if it's been talked about enough, honestly, at this conference, how it's beginning to become so difficult to have a conference in a non-European country. And a lot of what the civil unrest in Santiago is going on about right now is government action and economic inequality, and like high taxes and high tariffs and like bus fares in Santiago. And so I just think it's very interesting that we're even like this conference that's supposed to be addressing inequality as an aspect of climate change, like you can't even ignore it anymore. And like those who really don't have the means to be able to pay for that extra plane ticket once it was relocated, like that's a whole voice that is like missing at this conference that I think is so shadowed by the inequality issues in Chile.
And when we saw, I believe it was Monday evening there was a joint plenary where NGO constituencies were allowed to give statements. The trade unions and the environmental NGOs both gave very strong statements on how this issue is being overlooked, with the trade union NGOs even putting a bandage over one of each of their eyes as a sign of solidarity with the protesters who have been intentionally blinded by police in the past several weeks and months. And the environmental NGOs speaker also had an eye drawn on her hand and her palm that she held up during her statement. And that plenary was attended by, members of NGOs, a handful, but it was late at night, and the number of parties there was maybe less than a couple dozen. So when they say they're even giving platforms to these kind of statements and action by NGOs and activists, people aren't really paying as much attention as they should. And we've got these big bright signs in the Chile pavilion and things that sort of try to give off this image that everything's okay.
Yeah.
And they're not dealing directly with these impacts and the feelings that their own people have about these sorts of things that are being brutally repressed.
So what's something that you guys think would be a new way to approach this issue? Because obviously saying they need more voice is not enough. So what's something that you think would be an innovative way of just coming forward and giving people this voice? A lot of things similar that have been going on in the world use the internet. You could branch off a variant of that, or just what are your thoughts on the matter? Open table.
Well, I think just in general, more Western and Eurocentric nations are very cut off from nations in the global South like Chile. And so, for example, whenever the protests started happening, everyone at my school was talking about how, I can't believe they're all protesting over bus fares. Because like a news article in the U.S. said that they're protesting over like how expensive it is to pay, like go on a bus. And so I just think that there's a lot of disconnect on a cultural level from kind of us in the States and in Europe to places in the global South that deal with these kind of issues all the time. And we're only aware of this because we're at this national conference and we're coming in contact with these different groups that are having these conversations. But I think in like what you mentioned in general, like just more outreach, like the internet, social media, just staying more connected globally, which is sometimes a very difficult thing to do. And using like our voices as American citizens to say, hey, like American government, we really wish you would like make a statement on this or something like that.
I think another thing that would be really interesting, I know a number of non-governmental organizations send delegates of their own parties, of their own groups to conferences like the COP. But Jack kind of mentioned earlier that when the switch happened from Santiago to Europe, there are a number of people who could not afford their plane tickets and could not afford to switch over. And so, as he was saying, there's a number of voices that are not being heard at this conference. And I think an interesting move to make, although I'm not sure who exactly would make it, would be to, instead of funding more voices that are of these same groups of more American students or more European students or non-governmental organization workers, I think it would be interesting to fund some of the people who couldn't afford to make it over and make the switch over to Europe. Some of the people who are from Santiago, who are from Chile, because in moving, absolutely zero of those voices are being heard at this point. So at least while the conference was still there was going to be exposure to some of those issues, and there was going to be interaction with some of those people. So I think that it would be an interesting move for someone to help to fund those people to come over so that those voices could still be heard.
I think that's a really, really cool idea. But how do we convince these massive countries about funding things moving forward? And I don't expect us to actually come with a concrete answer tonight. This is something that they've been dealing with for, years long. And it's a really touchy and difficult subject. As we finish up this little session here, I want to know, what are some closing thoughts? Those of you leaving, just a couple seconds, what's one thing you're going to miss and what's one thing you're looking forward to, like after being here?
One thing I'm going to miss is, honestly, I think I'm going to miss like the people that I've gotten to speak to. And I'm going to miss walking around and getting kind of constant passive exposure to all these different cultures and different people and different experiences that I don't have to intentionally seek out every day. Just sitting on the metro, I get to hear 3 different languages every morning while drinking coffee. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. I am looking forward to eating food that I am very familiar with, which is kind of sad being in such a wonderful country with wonderful food, but I miss my home food, so I'm ready for that.
And that is entirely fair.
Something that I'm going to miss, definitely, is kind of an easy answer for me. So though I do very much love my state and the people in it, I am, when it comes to the conversation on climate change and social inequality, I'm constantly like a minority voice in the room, just because of like the political culture there. And so it's that's something I'm very comfortable with growing up there, but it's very validating to come to spaces like this where everyone's just kind of on the same page of like what science is true, and more like progressive change oriented people. And that really recharges me when I go back into my state and try to create change on the local level, in a space that's sometimes really discouraging. And so that's something that I'm going to miss going back. Something that I'm looking forward to, I hate to repeat Haley, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited to go back to some Louisiana food.
You gotta get that gumbo.
The food, Yeah, I gotta get some gumbo. Gotta get some The food here, although interesting, it's not always for me. I'm vegetarian. Also, the level of seasoning here just doesn't really match my standards. So I am a little bit excited to go back home, get some food and some fresh brewed coffee because all they drink here is espresso. That's a problem.
This is true.
And then Lucas, how are you feeling at the end of your second COP, having gone through 2 week ones of really intense negotiations and information? What's something that just kind of you're going to leave this experience with?
Well, one thing I really like, and I think that I've been sort of lucky to be in week one, where you get these I'm just a very technical person, and I like this sort of technical, gritty discussions that you get to be in the room for over the language of all these documents. And while it can be frustrating when you watch 4 to 5 hours of discussion over single words or punctuation, it's really exciting to see, okay, this is where international law is being crafted, and where policy is being made. But I am also looking forward to returning to this same type of debate back in the States, where, national level action is where progress is actually made towards the goals that they're laying out here in Madrid. So, that carries its own set of challenges, but I'm also looking forward to getting back to where the real on-the-ground work can be done.
That's awesome. As we wrap up, thank you all for joining me here tonight. We'll probably do a couple more little things like this, maybe add video if people are comfortable with it later on in the week. And I'd like to just thank the American Chemical Society for giving us their spots to come out here to talk to these people, to have this climate conversation. And I'd also like to thank some of our different universities, and we have some fellowships over here that just kind of sponsored us to help get us here. I know my home university, Angelo State University, really helped me out. They helped cover my flights. They're really supportive. They're going to be broadcasting this podcast later to thousands of people around the country, and soon after this, the world. Thank you all for tuning in. You'll catch us next time.